Hey guys, I'm not feeling so great. There's something that's been going around. I I think Grade A Comics passed it on to me, but he got it from everyone else, so I'm gonna try to get over it real quick. If you just stick with me, I think I'm gonna feel better. I feel like everyone else has got it, so this is like the end of the... Oh, okay. So, the first thing the doctor said I needed to answer was, who is my favorite ongoing book with just one main hero? Now, since this is a mainstream thing, it's getting around, I have to, delineate between the Marvels and the DCs. And this one's really, really easy. So, Marvel is clearly Deadpool. That's not even a question. Why even... Okay. DC-wise, right now, I know where money is, but really, guys, Green Arrow is the only new 52 book that's his own thing, doing something new. It may not be perfect, but it's actually doing its own thing. You can argue that it's the show or whatever, but that's the pop culture moment. That's the mindset around the character right now, and to not use elements like that. I mean, even Batman and Superman have been subject to this since basically their inception, along with their radio shows and old school TVs and whatnot. You youngsters don't even remember. You and your health and vigor. What's my favorite? White for health, right? Ugh. Tastes like Parmesan. Starting to feel better. My favorite team book, unlike DC, I don't know why they can't seem to really do team books right now. The only one I think I'm even buying right now is Red Hood and the Outlaws, which isn't even that good. But it's my favorite DC one right now by default. That's where you're at right now, DC. Defaults. But on the other end, on the Marvel end, I want to say Brian Wood's X-Men. I feel like that's having an upswing and it's doing some good things. And Terry Dodson on art. I mean, it's just... It's good. It's nice to have a good book. So who's my favorite hero? Marvel side, I want to say Spider-Man, right? I want to say Spider-Man. And, yeah, but I can't right now. So I'm going to default to something safe, and I'm going to say Multiple Man, which I think just saw his last days. So, yeah. That's it for Marvel right now. That's a really good run, Peter David's X Factor. Go check it out. And then DC side, who's good? Who's a good hero in DC? They're all being maligned and dark and gritty. I don't know, man. I really liked Black Canary before the relaunch, but now for DC right now, I have to revert back to Green Arrow. He's everything people like about Batman, but really actually that, and he has a defined talent, and the book's damn good, and he actually has to deal with stuff, and yeah, that's weird. So there you go. Who's my favorite villain? Okay, Marvel, that feels really weird right now, because they're so used to fighting the heroes fighting that Do they even have time for villains anymore? I don't even know, man. Like, I have to admit, though, in Deadpool, I really like whenever Beartruck the Leaper shows up, because he gets knocked in the balls, and that's a good time. So I'm gonna go with that. And on DC's side, man, it's like the same story. They're always fighting each other. Don't really get along. They're all very snipey. The villains feel almost inconsequential in a lot of the books. So, I mean, really, the only villain that's had substance and really had anything revolve around just him is the Joker. And I know that's kind of like, ooh, your favorite villain's the Joker. But I mean, honestly, at DC, yeah, the Joker. He's the only one who actually feels like a villain, not like this gray moral thing. I don't know. I mean, I get that, and the villain shouldn't think they're a villain or anything like that necessarily, but there's no one else really out there that equates to anything like that. There's groups and stuff, but they're not a villain. So, yeah. Marvel or DC? Ugh, I have to pick one? Ugh. They've both done really reprehensible things all of last year. They're really shitty, and that's why a lot of them are bailing. It's almost like there's an image of a better company, a third right answer. But, oh, if I have to pick between them, fuck. I can't even... DC, because they sell $2.99 comics. There you go. What's my favorite event? Marvel-wise, I'm gonna have to say, like, Messiah Complex. Damn, I'm pretty sure that's the name. Which was this X-Men event that went across most of the X books. But the thing was, instead of having all this periphery stuff, when they're doing the X-Men events right, each book was a chapter. And so nothing was irrelevant in all work. Sometimes characters that were supposed to be in that book weren't in that issue because the chapter of the event needed to be played out. And that made that read better. Yeah. And that had profound effects for, like, all the characters involved, but it all tied into itself, and it had repercussions later that were played on their own books, but if you don't care about those characters, you just let that thread lie. Yeah. That's how an event really should be done. At DC... Fuck, man, I don't know. I mean, I guess Death of the Family. I mean, it was good. It had problems. But the honest to God truth is, DC events are balls. Like, that, I think, is the best one. I mean, Final Crisis, do you see how that ended? It's interesting in, like, a literary sense, but only that. Infinite Crisis is just confusing. Identity Crisis is questionable at best. Like, DC just... don't do events. They suck. Normally, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Your books are better doing their own thing and, like, intersecting in small chunks. Like, if I'm willing to count it, the Sinestro Corps War, freaking amazing. But that's not like an event. That was like there's a different word for that, I think, or you need to delineate it slightly differently. And oh, that was amazing. More of that. It's my least favorite book. Man, DC right now, it's Batwoman. That was disappointing. I've ran about that before, recently. Marvel? I don't know, man. I wanna say Spider-Man, but the guy who gave me the thing, it makes me feel so sick that I'm considering going and checking out the trades of Superior Spider-Man. That's how... That's where I'm at. Thanks, Scott. What book do I read that most others hate? That it's Marvel or DC, because I feel like everything not Marvel and DC is pretty much that sans like Saga. But like Nobody read Ninja Turtles, guys. But I feel like a lot of people don't read Deadpool, Marvel side, and I don't get it. And Red Hood and the Outlaws, I guess, DC wise, but I mean, like, I get that. I'm not trying to sell you guys on Red Hood, man. Not till they earn it. Whew. Yeah, starting to feel better. Okay. My least favorite event. Now, I want to preface this because I was really high in events, like with Civil War, and then it kind of faded and whatnot. But in order for it to be my least favorite, it really needs to honestly disappoint me. There needs to be something that falls flat. And it had to be something that I liked and then fell down. So it's not going to be your, like, all-time worst events or whatever. Like, there are worse events than the ones I'm going to name, but they're not my least favorite because they're almost forgettable. So on Marvel's side, that for me was this recent Battle of the Atom. Because for the most part, X-Men events, and this one followed that formula of being this chapter thing that would go through, like I described. And Battle of the Atom sucked. It didn't need to be that long. It was a waste of space. It killed the momentum of most of the books that were incorporated to it. I mean, everything that can go wrong with an event effectively did, except for the art, I think. Which is a big deal, don't get me wrong, but conceptually, editorially, mess. And so that really let me down and really pushed me off the X-Men. Honestly, I wouldn't be picking up Brian Wood's X-Men anymore if it wasn't for Terry Dodson on art, because that will sell a book in this household. Then, DC-wise, I want to say the lead into Brightest Day, Blackest Night. Blackest Night was disappointing to me because there was so much promise and it did so much, and it took the idea of already the different Lantern Corps rings representing an emotion, lifting that to another level, like incorporating that on certain DC characters. Like, there was a lot of promise in the interplay, and honestly it got around one of the greatest sins of event books by having all the tie-ins being somewhat interesting, just due to the fact that they could be self-contained stories, but they could only take place during that event as well. And it kind of interrupted some things, but in a way that more or less worked. There were a few books that, yeah, I get, but it more or less worked. And for the most part, most of the tie-ins were their own, like, 3-issue miniseries, so it wasn't actually interrupting any stories. And so it, like, had all this setup, but then the ending was just such a weak ending. Like, for all that setup and all that good in the middle, but you need to earn the ending for it to really be a good or great event, and that fell so flat. It was just a lead-in for this Brightest Day mini, which I never really read because that never hooked me. Maybe it's good, maybe I should revisit it, maybe, but that let me down. And what's so weird to me is so many people hold it in this high esteem, and I mean, I understand why. Like I said, there's definitely the upsides to that one, but the ending brings it down so far that I honestly think Final Crisis was a better event than that one. So maybe it would have been better if it didn't try to bring in the entire scope of the DC and kept it at the Lantern level like the Sinestro Corps one did. Is usually what I think about that one. So, yeah. Alright, the last question. What is my favorite comic jail? And I'm not going to split this Marvel or DC, because there is a singular one that is my favorite. Hands down, easy question. And that is the Vault from Marvel. It was really only used in the 90s, I think. It was a big cosmic jail that was taken away from a lot of the main cities, but easily transported for villains to keep them somewhat separate and to give them some distance if they wanted to wreak havoc or deal with the heroes in New York, which made a sense. But it was placed in Colorado Springs, in Colorado, which is interesting because it's right next to the Air Academy base. Anyways, and also right next to, not too far from where we house a nuclear missile silo area control. Yeah. I just, I like the fact that my home state got some love in Marvel, and that's about the only time you'd see, and there was nothing to really... that really brought them there for more than a few panels, really. Nothing really defined it as Colorado. They say the vault's housed kind of at the base of the Rocky Mountains. That doesn't really mean anything. It's one of those things that's always stuck with me, and I always wish that they used that more. Not just because it's Colorado, but because Marvel and DC are guilty of this. They're not, I mean, as much as they want to be globetrotting and all that, they don't really have a lot of locales really outside of New York City, and then like certain key global areas, it feels like. It would be nice if the rest of the country, and then even other countries, got a little bit more love. So, there you go. So again, big thumbs up to Grade A Comics for doing this whole, or letting me be tagged. And I, honestly, everyone I know on YouTube has been tagged. So if someone wants to try to tag my new minute, he left us. I don't know. Yeah. So, beyond that, I was trying to put together a Q&A video of my own, so if you have any further questions, bada bing, bada boom. And, if not, I think I have enough to actually do a video now, so I'll get to that soon. And I will, catch you all soon with a comic review. You know how we roll here.